Hi, everyone. If you're like me, you have found mobile phones in the classroom to be both a blessing and a curse. There are times when I want my students to have access to the outside world, but there are other times when I just want my students fully engaged in the classroom without distracting technology. This is where our sponsor Flipped comes in. Flipped is a first ever classroom engagement application that keeps students from getting distracted by their mobile phones when they're learning, and it does it in a really clever way. Some instructors have even reported that Flipped has been associated with increased grades and reduction in attrition. If you are interested in learning more about Flipped, please visit flippedapp.co/psych. That's FLIPDAPP.co/psych. Welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Garth Neufeld, along with Eric Landrum, your podcast hosts. This is a special edition of the Psych Sessions podcast, Intro Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching introductory psychology, where we showcase some of the best teachers from across the nation, from high school, 2-year, and 4-year institutions. We hope that you'll find this helpful as you go to prepare your own intro psych class for the upcoming year, as we talk about assessment, course design, and pretty much everything else. So let's get right into it. Please enjoy Intro Psych Sessions. I am here with Noland White, and Noland, your institution is called?
Georgia College and State University.
Thank you. And we are going to talk about introductory psychology, general psychology, Psych 100, Psych 1, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk about that. This is, I don't know what to call it yet. You're the first one. So we're going to shoot from the hip a little bit here. But I wanted to bring Psych 100 into the podcast because I want to showcase what different teachers are doing for this class, because I feel like there are so many ways to solve the problem of Psych 100.
Right.
I think there are actually like a lot of problems to solve, and I love solving problems. So the idea is, what if we get teachers of psychology who teach this class, who know a lot about this class, and just have them tell us what they tend to do. And I think there are books. I think about Bridget Hard and Dana Dunn's book on, themes in teaching introductory psychology or whatever. There are books definitely out there that are helpful, but maybe you don't have time to read a book or whatever. So we're going to do these 20-minute talks on intro psych, and I'm just going to fire away with some questions if that's all right, and we'll just see how it goes. How's that?
Sounds good.
Cool. So Nolan, let's talk about you just for a minute in case people don't know you. You're in Georgia. You've taught intro psych for how long?
16 years.
16 years, and you co-authored intro psych textbook?
Correct.
Yeah, and you've been doing that for how many years?
9 maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
A little while.
So you've been in this intro psych stuff for a while. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your class. So just to give us an idea of like, who do you teach? How big is the class? Who are your students? Those kinds of things.
Okay. For some silly reason, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, I agreed to start teaching a class once a week. So my intro psych class is typically 40 students. In the fall, it's made up primarily of psych majors. My spring section tends to be a little bit more diverse when it comes to majors. It's a face-to-face class that meets once a week on Tuesdays, and teaching students that for the majors, those are typically freshmen and sophomores. My spring sections, I'll tend to have more sophomores, juniors, and seniors intermixed, just because they're different students taking the class.
Okay, and you said 40 students?
Typically 40 students, yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's start here. How do you structure your class?
Well, because it's once a week, I learned early on that if I didn't provide a lot of structure for the students, they tended not to be as successful. So like when I started teaching it from once a week, after teaching it twice, I was teaching it twice a week before. And when I first started doing it once a week, I did not have it structured the same way I do now. So what I have now is I use an online component, and students have always encouraged them to read the text first. They have homework that they do on Monday night that's due before we ever hit any material in the classroom. And then on Wednesday, they have a follow-up assessment based on the content we covered. Then on Thursdays, they have a short writing essay that they have to submit where I'm asking, hopefully, to see some evidence of comprehension and application of the content.
So this repeats throughout the semester?
This repeats throughout the semester. I do comprehensive exams about every 4 weeks.
Okay, so
I'm on a semester schedule.
Why have you chosen to repeat the same thing for 16 weeks?
That same structure?
Yeah, that structure. Like, why have you chosen to do that again and again for students?
For me, it's helping them maintain that engagement with the content. With the face-to-face meeting that we're only meeting once a week, before I set this type of structure in place, it seemed like they were maybe reading the night before and not thinking about the content again until maybe the next class period. So I'm trying to prompt them to engage in the material multiple times and to test what they understand versus what they don't understand.
Right. And what is the repetition of, they always know what they're doing week to week, they get used to it. How is that helpful to them?
I believe that it helps them not only in their planning purposes, it's helping them with their task management, their deadlines. They know those deadlines don't change. I do post my exam dates ahead of time unless we had something like Snowmageddon like we had this semester. They don't hardly ever change either. So I'm expecting that they will not only learn how to manage their tasks, but to work against established deadlines. That's one of the things that I hope they take away from the class. In addition to some type of psychology content and skill approach or mastering at some point, I also hope that they're going to take away some skills that can help them maybe be successful in some other classes.
Right. Okay. So you have them do an assignment before they come to class.
Yep.
Is that correct? And is that to get them to read
Yes.
the textbook? That's correct. And so you use a textbook.
Yes.
And is that the primary way that they get the content? Is through the textbook, would you say?
They are responsible I assign each chapter for reading.
Mm-hmm.
And then in class, we do a combination. I do use PowerPoint. I also use small group activities, partner activities, demos. So it just depends on the day. And I communicate to students on day one that if your definition of a class or teaching equals me sitting up in front of you and regurgitating the text, then you need to find a different class because I'm not going to do that. And so,
right. So if they've come in having read the learning chapter or something like that, then what are you doing in class that day? And
number one, I've looked online to see their assessment that they took the night before. And if they do it the way in which I've encouraged them to, and that is to read ahead of time, then take the study plan assessment without looking at their notes, without looking at their text, I can get a snapshot of what they know versus what they don't know even before I go into the classroom. And so sometimes I can use that information to kind of tailor my approach for that day. Like this, many of our students have difficulty differentiating between negative reinforcement and punishment. So that's nothing new. But if I see that they're having challenges in something else that's not typical, then I might spend a little bit more time than I normally would. In the classroom, like I said, it's a combination of me as best as I can having a discussion with 40 of my new closest friends. It is typically me up in front of them for parts of the class. Other times, walking around as they're talking to one another. I use clickers in the classroom, which you don't have to use clickers. You can use raising your hand or standing up or whatever. But I do use the clickers to kind of reinforce that a formative assessment approach. I don't think what I do would be classified hardcore as just pure formative assessment, but I do use formative assessment strategies through everything I'm doing, so that there's a way not only that they're seeing how much they know and understand versus what they don't, but also it helps me. So just like when you ask questions in class, I show them the data, and then sometimes if I need to kind of change direction a little bit or revisit information, Like, for example, on the learning chapter especially, the next class period, sometimes I'll start off that class period with 10 items related to chapter content from the previous week. So that information continues to come forward. I will also, throughout the semester, interject clicker items from previous chapters into future class. No, previous content shows up in class.
Right.
Just like many of us reference, like when we're talking about learning, then we reference how it's related to psych disorders, which is related to treatment,
yeah.
to therapies, to development.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hopefully help students start to make those connections themselves.
Right, and you're modeling distributed practice for them, or
correct.
You're bringing that into the classroom. No, that's great. A typical intro psych textbook has 16 chapters in it. How much of that content do you cover?
The textbook I use...
Eric's going to kill me for saying cover because he hates that word. How much do you teach?
I teach 15 chapters. I have a 15-chapter textbook. The way that I structure that, again, is they have online activities they do before we hit the material in the classroom. There are 3 chapters of those 15 that is self-study for them, but it shows up on their exams and on their... No, because everything's comprehensive.
Right.
And so I will address that content. Sometimes during a class meeting, I'll reference content, but I don't necessarily sit up in front of them or do activities related to that content they do self-study. But I still reference and hold them accountable for it on the exams and in discussion of content and other areas and application in the class.
Right. So if you don't mind me asking, which chapters do you know off the top of your head? Which ones do you expect them to
it depends. I've mixed it up a little bit. So
okay.
I kind of go back and forth sometime between the stress chapter. I'll sometimes do personality self-study. I'll sometimes do development self-study. Sometimes I'll do the sex chapter, self-study.
Yeah.
But I mix it up a little bit. So, because I find that, it just seems like not only for me, I like to, make sure that it's addressed, but also to kind of keep myself where I'm not ever not teaching the same thing for long periods of time.
Yeah, you got to keep it fresh for yourself as well.
Exactly.
So these assessments that they're taking before you cover the content in class, Garth. Eric's rolling his eyes right now. He's going to have to offer me a better word than cover because it's an easy word to use. Anyway, so what is that assessment? I assume something multiple choice where you can see quite quickly what students are getting and not getting?
It's a study plan that's made up of a 25-item multiple choice pretest. Then based on their performance, they may or may not be assigned some additional study material. And then a post-test that's also 25 items multiple choice.
Okay.
So that in itself is the study plan.
Okay.
That's due on Monday night.
Yeah.
Then on Wednesday, they have essentially a chapter exam, which is, again, 25 items multiple choice. Besides having the opportunity to assess themselves, and if they do it as I try to encourage them, I do encourage them, and hopefully, some of them take advantage of it, doing it without their book and their notes. They can get a representation of the same type of items that they might see on their in-class exams. Mm-hmm. So I tell students that I don't believe that you should ever try to trick a student. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to test you. I use learning objectives in my exam. I will tell them the learning objectives that I'm going to test them over. But I don't go through the text and go, okay, well, don't pay attention to this, don't pay attention to this. I just say focus on these learning objectives. Mm-hmm. That's going to make up the bulk of your exam. I give that to them typically 1 week out from the exam.
Okay, so the learning objectives are from the textbook or the syllabus or
both? And
okay,
they're on my syllabus. They come from APA goals for undergraduate psych version 2.0. Mm-hmm. They are related to our departmental goals as well. So I have the APA goals, but the learning objectives I give them for specific exams come from the textbook.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. How else do you assess? So you said you have 3 or 4 exams?
I do 3 exams plus a final.
3 exams plus a final. And what do those look like?
Typically 100 multiple choice.
100 multiple choice?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I'm an ogre. Yeah, I'm one of those mean folks.
Yeah. And do you... Are these questions that you comb through from Test Bank, or do you create these? Are they questions that you've created over years? How does that work for you?
It's all the above.
Okay.
Early on in my teaching, I relied solely on the Test Bank, and then over the years, I have edited items, and I have also created my own. So it's a combination of things.
Yeah. Do you have any insights about what makes a good multiple choice question?
No. I'm still learning.
Yep.
I mean, we could both sit down and look at the literature together, but for me, it's finding a way that is not only capturing what it is you're trying to assess, but you're doing so in a way that's fair. You know, I do use stats afterwards. I look at the item analysis. I want to make sure that it was at least an option for them to do well on it. I look at how the class does overall on the item. You know, if I find that less than half the class gets an item correct, I take a closer look, and then I look at the by-factor correlation. You know, and then if it's an unfair question, I throw it out. I give them credit for it. Mm-hmm. And I've had discussions with colleagues. Some that would, do you throw out the ones that 100% of the class gets correct? I said, no, I don't. I just let that ride. And I make a note of it that maybe I need to edit some of those on the next exam. So that way I'm continuing to use that data to help. No.
That's always fascinating when students all get a question correct. It would be worth a conversation to think about why that is.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, we should mention that we're joined here in this room by. This is the first onlooker of any kind of Psych Sessions interview. It's Lindsay Maslin's in the room. We're at SEPA right now, so we're like giving thumbs up to each other while we're talking about this stuff. So I just have a couple more questions for you. Well, here's a question: are you happy with your course right now?
I love my class.
Okay.
Yeah, intro is my favorite class. I mean, I always have the challenge. For me, I want to do a better job of assessing students after the fact. You know, what are they walking away with? I mean, I can show you exam scores. I can show you, I can tell you my gut reactions in class. I can give you anecdotal data. I would love to do a better job of 3 years down the road. You know, some of the research that Eric and others have done. Now, what are students actually retaining? What are they walking away with? Not only for, there is content that I would hope that they could at least, if they can't remember the exact facets of, some type of psychological tidbit, because can they give me an application of it? That's what I really want to see. Can they apply the information? And what are the kind of skills are they getting when they come out of the class? I'm hoping they're getting knowledge of that psychology is a science, and it's a science because of the way that we do things, not because of a name. Can they apply that scientific method to their own thinking and the way they take in information and make decisions in their daily life? Are the skills that I'm trying to help promote with the task management and managing their time in better ways and working against deadlines and distributed practice, are they applying that in their other classes? I have anecdotal data from students that say that they do, but I don't have a measure that I could show you and go and give you X amount. I just have anecdotal data on that. So.
Right. So we need to create a community of people who are going to collect this data together because
Exactly.
we all want to do it, right?
I think so.
So we need Regan to coordinate something.
That's right.
Yeah. So just a couple questions. Is there anything that you want to change in your class? Like, I know that for me, I think about my class. I'm like, I want to change these things, but it's such a big job to change things. Do you ever think about your class and think like, I'd love to do that?
I've wondered about the feasibility of a 2-semester sequence for IntroPsych and being able to actually spend more time, go more depth, and actually work in more hands-on. Have them do simulations and things like that online. And we have a research participant pool in the department that they can be involved in. But to actually be able to have a lab-like experience in a 2-semester sequence for intro, I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, neat.
So,
final question is, what do you want students to leave with from your introductory, and you might have covered this already, but from your introductory psychology class, it's the when you see a student in a few years and they come back and tell you about your intro class, what do you want them to know, or what do you want them to leave with?
I would hope that at least some of them are as excited about psychology as I am. I want them to leave that class with the same buzz that I had about psychology when I first took intro psych. I want them to be able to look back, and they might not always be able to remember specific things that they said, but I want them to feel like they were in a worthwhile endeavor, that their time was well spent, and then they can maybe tell me some applications of it. And maybe even for those that are going on to the major, what they're doing now. For those that are non-majors, can they at least recognize the role of psychology in their life?
Well, thanks.
Well, thanks again for the invitation, and I appreciate being the first, and if nothing else, I serve as a bad example, so.
You got it.